right, I want to bring in Scott Reid now. He is CTV's political commentator. So, Scott, good morning to you. I'll just go through the numbers real quick. 34 felony counts, 1 conviction, 2 cases are pending. He's got 2 impeachments, 6 bankruptcies, and now 4 more years ahead of him. Are you surprised at how decisive the results were for Donald Trump, given all of that?
Well, about the only thing that I correctly predicted about the election was that it could actually break one way or the other more decisively than some people thought. I felt the Electoral College could gather up even if the votes were close. But look, I'll add to your list of notable factoids. Donald Trump, second term in office, controls the White House, controls both houses of Congress. Looks like he'll also retain the House, and he's flipped the Senate. Clearly has lots of influence over the Supreme Court. And so you're now going to have a historic presidency. Historic in the sense that not only has he come back to the Oval Office, but he now is there with almost no constraints over him. He has an authority and a power that he has concentrated in his hands that's nearly unprecedented. And so the big question is, how will he use it? Well, we know that he is an impetuous, impulsive, and unpredictable person. And so I would label this as the unpredictable presidency. It is going to be very difficult to manage. If you're an ally, it's going to be very difficult if you're Canada, as we try to figure out how do we engage with this White House? How do we engage with this presidency? Or are we all simply going to be puppets on his string?
Well, that's a good point. And we already see Zelensky come out, Trudeau come out, sort of highlighting the positivity of the relationships between countries with the United States. So to that end, how do you think Trudeau and the Liberals will work with whoever is in the new Trump administration? And we know, it's not a big secret, how Trump felt about Trudeau the last time round.
Yeah, there's a conventional wisdom answer to that question, and that is that we'll adopt the Team Canada approach, the very same methodology and playbook that we took to Washington in 2018 and 2019 when we had to renegotiate what we now call the USMCA. The challenge is this. I don't know that that's going to work. That is fundamentally a diplomatic surround strategy, if you will. Let's find border state governors and border state senators who have influence over the president, fellow Republicans who might turn to him and say, my God, don't slap an across-the-board tariff on Canada of 10%. That's going to harm our industries and our interests. But is anyone going to listen to that plea now? Is there any governor or senator who's going to march into the Oval Office with Trump as profoundly powerful as he is now and say, don't do what you want to do. Don't exercise that whim. Instead, do what I want you to do. I don't think you're going to see that. So this entire surround strategy, diplomatic strategy, we're going to hear a lot about it. But I think there's a very strong prospect that it's going to need to be rethought. I think we could be in for a time of real challenge.
Yeah, and it's tough to say what relationships President Trump will value. We know about the trading relationship between Canada and the U.S., but when we look at, the question of what does the U.S. Position look like now in global affairs, it's hard to say, isn't it, Scott, how much Trump really knows or is concerned about Canada?
Well, I think the really important question is, does Donald Trump give a damn about people who say don't do that? Like, does he care when someone says to him, do not slap a 10% across-the-board tariff on Canadian energy, agriculture, lumber? Don't do that, because that will harm our industries and our economy. I think very likely he will say, I told people for a year I was going to do that. I am doing it. No one can stop me, and no one will try to stop me. And that's the challenge for the Canadian government. If you don't have voices of influence that can hem the president in, that can talk to him from the inside, how do you shift this policy orientation? I mean, it's very difficult to imagine, as much as we might sort of dismiss and roll our eyes, the idea that he's going to do precisely what he said and impose tariffs all across the board and trigger trade wars, and we'll be forced to retaliate. And then when we retaliate, will that draw his vindictive ire? What does that then mean for the renegotiation of USMCA? It's going to be a very troubling, very unpredictable presidency, and no one's going to be more challenged than we here in Canada because our economy and our cultural life is so interdependent.
As far as I know, we haven't heard from Pierre Poilievre today on Trump's victory. We heard from Danielle Smith. There was some outreach there from Alberta. But how do you think Poilievre would respond to a second Trump presidency and what it means for Canada?
Look, he's going to play it cool. Here's the truth of the matter. Guys like me were searching for unobvious explanations to how Harris might win. The truth is she didn't, because there was an overwhelming desire for change in the United States, and she didn't represent change. She represented incumbency. So, Pierre Poilievre is going to look at that and say, I'm on the right side of that equation. The same forces that were dissatisfied with economic circumstances, the same forces said it's time for a change. The same forces saying our country is going in the wrong direction, not the right direction. Those that we saw so powerfully manifest themselves at the ballot box in the United States last night are present here in our domestic politics. And Pierre Poilievre knows that he's the beneficiary of that. So my guess is he's going to play it very straight. He's going to say, I plan to engage with the president in a straightforward, professional manner. We'll protect our national interests and pursue our national interests, but we're not going to do name calling. We're not going to do jingoism. And he knows that underlying all of that is a time for a change juggernaut that not only propelled Trump into the presidency in the United States, but looks poised to reward Pierre Poilievre here in Canada.
Scott Reid for us this morning. Scott, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks. See you later, Marcia.